Yes, technical difficulties galore.
Good morning!
Oh boy.
Oh, man. What a morning, huh?
Yeah, this technology stuff. It is amazing, isn't it?
All I'm trying to do is simultaneously beam myself through a magical box for anyone in the entire world to see on any device anywhere. It's not that hard. Come on. Why isn't it working?
No, come on, technology.
Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
not only that, but of course it's like running multiple softwares, overlaying things so it can look pretty for all those people as well.
Yes, and you know what the great thing is? We're on the bleeding edge of technical cutting revolutions.
The bleeding edge.
The bleeding
yeah.
edge, yes. I feel like I'm bleeding every time I use it.
1,000 small cuts
Yes,
every day.
And then you know what the best part is? Then you realize, oh, typed in 37 instead of 38.
Oh, that was my bad too.
No, I think I had done it the second before too. Oh, man. So good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. It is November 18th, 2021.
Yes, happy Thursday, everybody.
Yes, Thirsty Thursday indeed. I think we might go ahead and get that started in about a couple minutes here to help out with some of this. So hopefully for those of you who are maybe migrating from the other stream, not only did we have technical issues, but then the stream broke, so then we had to redo the whole stream, and so now all of our people have to come find us again. Oh my goodness, woe is me indeed. But you know what? That's okay. We'll just keep moving on because that's what we do, right?
No, right. I mean, what else are we gonna do?
You know, one thing that
Just give in?
you have this pretty picture of what you think it's going to be, right? And then reality sets in, and that's when you start hitting all the problems and the speed bumps, and you're like, is this really
As
what it
an
is?
artist, I have had this. I thought I knew what the pretty picture was gonna be.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is gonna be a beautiful horse. No.
This is going to be a beautiful horse. No.
It's not. It's
No,
gonna be
it's not.
a slug, maybe.
Well, you know,
be kind of brownish, that's for sure.
Brown. Hey, that's a good reference. You know, with the other thing I was going to say was that has that expectation, but then things don't go how you expect. Relationships. Oh man.
Ba-doom.
But fortunately for us today,
mine are all perfect.
yeah, they're all perfect. Huh?
All of them.
That's funny because I was talking with your wife the other day, and she didn't seem to agree.
La 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 la. I'm not gonna listen.
Well, and also, not only was there one problem with the stream, then problem with the internet, but we also have problem then with the camera. But however, now we get a little more zoomed out camera.
Yeah, if y'all wanted to see what the rest of the room looks like.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of my forehead. You know, it's looking pretty good.
That's nice forehead. Yeah.
Well, welcome to what the hell is water?
Yes. I am Ryder Richards.
And I'm Reed Garcia. Good morning, everybody. And, you know, today we will be talking a little bit about relationships. We actually have a guest here with us who we'll bring in a little bit. But real quick, Ryder, let's talk about yesterday. What did we talk about yesterday?
Oh, man. Went off on a very messy tried to define what capitalism is. That was a doozy. Somewhere in the midst of that, we also got into competition, especially the sort of amateur intramural competition. And then after that, Reed brought up this excellent video that he saw that was about brown, and we talked about color. So we had our 3 C's: capitalism, competition, and color.
And it wasn't even that intentional. It just kind of fell into its ways. And those are like, man, all these guys do come up with letters and then talk about different topics.
Reed just pulled that one out on the fly.
Yeah,
that was
because
great.
For those of you like, what is he talking about? Well, last Thursday, we had a bunch of M's. We had 4 M's that we ended up talking about. We're like, might as well double down.
Yeah, the next day it was more M's.
The next day was more M's. And I'm looking now because I wanted to read these comments from the video. I scrolled down because I was like, all right, I always like to take a quick glance at the comments just to see if there's anything interesting or funny. And so when he's doing that experience where he's going with the black background to the white background, and he has the brown square in the middle, and
it shifts to look orange.
It shifts to look orange, so it goes back between to our eyes. It looks like black and then orange, and so he says, "Oh, it depends on the context, right?" And so somebody says, "Hey, what's your eye color?" Contextual orange. I was like, yes, I like
great.
that.
Yeah.
And the other one is brown is a really dark orange. And then he says, me. America had 2 orange presidents.
That's great. Back to back.
Yes, I like that one a lot. So yeah, and then what's our challenge yesterday? Do you remember our challenge yesterday?
Oh yeah, it was around competitions. If you're going to be, and we're trying to pair that up a little bit with starting a new tradition. So when you go into the holiday season, paying attention to traditions, but also if you're playing a board game with your family members, you know, tone down the competition. Maybe realize why you're there and what it's actually about instead of getting all caught up in the moment.
Yes, amen to that. And I just want to do one more close up of Ryder, which of course it's the day we don't get the zoom lens, but Ryder has officially shaved his lovely mustache.
I'm sorry, everybody. It's just I feel like I'm missing something. I don't know, some je ne sais quoi.
I like it. Okay, well, you know what? Let's do one of our intros actually at the beginning.
What?
Helpful for life. Welcome to What the Hell is Water? I'm Reed Garcia.
And I'm Ryder Richards.
And this is episode 38, despite whatever the title says it is. And today we are being joined by a lovely guest. His name is Eric Wooten, and he works for the company. I say he works for the company, but he made the company Altered Marriage. And Eric is somebody that I met in a professional group that I'm a part of called SPI Pro. I believe I've mentioned it here on the show before, but it is basically the SPI stands for Smart Passive Income. Have I talked to you about this before?
Yeah, isn't it started up by Pat Flynn?
Yes, it was started by Pat Flynn. And the Smart Passive Income, the whole idea of it in one of his taglines is you can work hard now so you can reap the benefits later. And so this is a group of people who are looking to do that type of things for themselves. And it also happens to be a great group of really great people. Pat Flynn has done an amazing job building his brand with SPI, and SPI Pro is what's called a paid membership group, which we'll talk more about some other time, where people pay to be part of a community so that they can grow themselves and be better and learn from people who are maybe a couple steps ahead of them. They can help people who are a couple steps behind them. It's a really great thing. It's the first paid community I've ever been a part of, and I've really enjoyed it. And the thing about community is such a valuable thing, whether it's in your working life or in your personal life, it has a lot of value. And we've seen a lot of studies on that that show that that's a very powerful thing, and also is linked with longevity of life. And so community is one of the things that I think we'll be talking about today as we dive into relationships and we learn a little bit more from Eric. So let's go ahead and jump over to Eric and get this conversation started.
Sounds good.
Good morning, Eric.
Oh, look at that. I don't know if lovely would be the adjective I'd use to introduce me, but I appreciate that. Good to see you guys.
If you gave yourself one adjective, what would it be then, Eric?
Old. I think
old.
Yeah.
Hey, you can join me on that one. That's what I've been using lately. Or actually, I wasn't until I got on this podcast with Reed, and he's like 12.
Yes,
right.
So I had to just drive it home. To make him, I just wanted to make him feel wiser and appreciated.
Yeah, that's not how I feel.
Yeah, you feel pretty good until you get around a guy like Reed, and then you're like, what have I done with my life? Reed's like 18, and he's trying to do stuff here.
What can you say? Sometimes you just come out of the womb, and I was actually playing chess, on day one.
Yeah, you're just gifted.
What can you do? And if Ryder and I know anything, is if you start really early and you dedicate yourself to a singular task, that's the way to success, right?
Yeah, no.
Oh,
no.
darn.
All of the books we've been reading say exactly the opposite.
Exactly the opposite, huh?
Yeah, which is phenomenal. Well, I think they're just trying to make the argument for the opposite to give the rest of us, guys like me who have just fiddled around our whole life, we all need books for us.
We need excuses, right?
Yeah,
and Eric, just since that's completely out of left field for you, we just we're reading these two books. One was called So Good They Can't Ignore You, and one was called Range. And we were doing a book club on those two things, and so we've talked about it a couple times on the show, and it just kind of references is the better path to super specialize or to be a generalist or to kind of jump around and zigzag around. And I'm just curious for you, what do you think? Has nothing to do with relationships at all.
Yeah, I got zero clue. That So Good They Can't Ignore You. Wasn't that a comedian that said that?
Yeah, that was Steve Martin.
Very
yeah,
astute.
Good. Nice.
10 points to you.
Yeah, look at
Nice.
that. Hey, now listen.
You
I
know
look
how I
like
know?
that.
You know how I know that is because you're old enough to know who Steve Martin is. I think
Yeah,
that's
we
what
went
it
to school
is.
together. Yeah, we went to school together, me and Steve.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty good. Well, hey Eric, let's get back to the topic at hand here, and why don't you tell us a little bit about altered marriage? You know, how did it come to be, and what are you trying to do with it?
Yeah, it I think I just stumbled into it. Yeah, I was minding my own business years ago, working, trying to make money, and always found myself in the midst of people's relationships somehow. So maybe because I look old, they thought I had wisdom or something. And so, anyway, always had a passion for relationships. And so, about a year and a half ago, just in time for the pandemic, I thought, this would be a great time in life to launch out and start my own organization dedicated to helping couples. So, I did it. I took a leap and took a jump, started a 501(c)(3), and basically just trying to do all things helping couples. So I do some counsel. I'm a licensed counselor, so I do some counseling, some online classes, courses. Working on doing some kind of 4-day intensives this next year. So it's trying to help couples get better in their relationships.
That's awesome. And there's multiple things that I really like about that, but one of them is you having the courage to do something later on in your career. And that's one of the things that these books we were talking about reference is that, whether or not that's a good idea and the struggles that come from that and the resistance that you feel. And also just kind of the fact that, hey, sometimes when you're feeling that resistance, that means something you should lean into. And yeah, I mean, was it tough for you to make that decision that late? I mean, you know,
Yeah,
it's
sure. I
probably
mean, when you got a wife and 3 kids staring at you, wondering how you're going to pay the bills, taking a calculated risk is always tough. But no, going back to what you said before, you like, do you focus in and become an expert in something? I think it depends what it is. So obviously, in the field of relationships, so I kind of took a leap 15 years ago at age 30, left what I was doing business wise and went into full time ministry. But it was back then that I had a desire to help couples. But I was like, I'm 30 years old. What do I know? And how do you get this? So I think you fast forward 15 years, age 45. It's like, okay, I've been married 20 some years, been helping couples for over a decade. Now I feel like I got the skill set. So I think it was 15 years of just kind of preparing and building and crafting your skill and having a track record. So I probably wouldn't have done this if I didn't have a track record of, okay, I've helped couples. I know I can help couples. People seem to connect with me and what I'm doing. I probably could do this on my own. I think if I didn't have that track record, it probably would have been more of a foolish jump.
yeah. Well, that's basically lines up perfectly with a lot of
Mhm.
what these books are saying. I mean, one of the books, So Good They Can't Ignore You, it talks about this concept of career capital. And basically, you're working and you're developing and you're creating this career capital through your skills, through your maybe even your reputation, and things like that. And some people who make that jump too early before they have that career capital, that money or whatever that they can spend, they don't have the capital back up their jump. And so in the book, he talks about how that leads to some people failing. And so what more people have success with, much like yourself, is going into an area, doing the work, getting some specialization, right, and then making a jump into a slightly different area or a completely different area, and then utilizing that career capital that you've built up to make something successful. So I think that's that's perfect.
Well, it is, and
Yeah.
there's something else too about this is that it struck me as pretty profound that it'd be tough to take relationship advice from a 30-year-old as a guy who's like, I'm getting close to 45. Then it's like, it starts to become like, dude, I don't know if you've been in a marriage over 10 years, and after
Right.
there's certain marks that you hit that are just based on longevity. There's lessons you learn, that new challenges that come up that don't come up in the first 2 years. And so, having that kind of lifetime of experience, I think it lends some credibility to things. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear that if you started at 30, this might not have worked anyway, even if you had all the same wisdom.
Yeah,
Sure. Sure.
yeah, for
You
sure.
probably would. I mean, I look, there's a lot of people on the internet giving out relationship and dating advice that aren't married or are 30s. So, but their angles always, play the extreme, right? Men, you tired of, being demasculized in counseling, take my course, kind of, kind of thing. And
All
so
right.
that,
Yeah.
I'm
What
glad to hear
was
that kind of thing
what
exists.
was the Tom Cruise in Magnolia where he's got the little man bun? He's up there on stage,
I'm
just
not catching this
railing
one.
against all the men for being de-emasculated, basically. And I don't know. I mean, this is a kind of thing is you just get guys fired up and
oh
tell them to
yeah,
be more manly. Just double down on being
absolutely.
toxically manly.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that at all. But of course, as the resident 30-year-old in the group, I've got to stand up for some of the 30-year-olds out here and point out that one, yes, I think step one, regardless of how old you are, is recognizing what you do know and what you don't know. And when there are areas you don't know that much about, or you recognize there are people who know more, you reach out for help, right? And in some cases, that's utilizing a company like Altered Marriage or Helpful for Life. Some people who are doing the work to give you the information you need from trusted sources. In some cases, that's talking to your friends and your family and things like that, but that can also come with troubles as well. But yeah, so that's an interesting thing. But one thing I just wanted to point out was from both of these books, another thing they say is it's not just about time, right? And
Yeah.
that's a really easy comparison to make. So I want to point out, just because someone has spent a lot of time in life or in a marriage or in a job or anything, does not necessarily mean they're good at it.
No, I spend a lot of time sleeping, and sometimes I'm still not good at it.
Eric, I imagine in your years of counseling, you've probably seen some people who are, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but 1 year of a relationship versus 40 years of a relationship. And maybe, I don't know, talk to that a little bit. Have you seen any correlation
Oh,
between the length
sure. I
of
mean, yeah,
time?
you got all kinds of factors. I mean, just look at divorce rate, right? If it was just time and experience, then second and third marriages would statistically get better, not worse, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
this is my second time around. I should be better at it. Those people are just re-choosing, thinking, well, I chose wrong. Let me just re-choose, never dealing with their own issues, right? So it's like, I got I got a new marriage, maybe a new set of issues, but still a set of issues, because it's still two people. So I think, yeah, there's couples been married 40 years that have terrible relationships, and couples who've been 5 years in that are mature and, have taken care of the things they need to take care of. So
Yeah.
time is
Well,
not everything. Time is one thing. So I think time, experience, gift set, when you start mixing all that together, I think you've got some credibility. I heard some speaker, how speakers love stuff that rhymes, right? So years ago, I heard a speaker, but it always stuck with me going back to our topic was he said something to the effect of, when your visibility exceeds your ability, you lose credibility. And it was kind of that idea of if you get on the stage too soon and you're not ready for it, you lost credibility. People are like, what's this guy doing? He doesn't deserve to be here. So I think there's merit in that weight, right? In the development and preparation kind of thing. So I don't know if that was wisdom or it just scared me, one of the two, but I was like, all right, I'll just wait.
Hey, well,
We're good.
sometimes you need a little bit of both, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that fear instinct exists, one, to protect ourselves, right? But yeah, and sometimes it also fights against us, though. So it's a tough balance, right? Because especially when you're going out and trying to create something, one of the most popular things that comes out of that, especially in the entrepreneurship world, but also across anything, going into a new job, new relationship, or whatever, there's something called imposter syndrome, and that's where you feel like I'm an imposter here. I'm not good enough. If this shouldn't be me. Why me? All those types of things, right?
Yeah, and, you often sort of see that with. So it's funny. I just had a friend text me about having imposter syndrome, and she's a great artist and has been making art for years. But she was talking to a bunch of her other art friends, and they're all up in the Boston area, and we're just talking about how they all feel like imposters all the time. Like, and I keep wondering to myself, like, you are good at this. You're doing this. You have skills in this. You're making output. Like, why would you ever feel like an imposter in this space? And I think there's, I don't know, something going on out in the world that is undermining our belief in our own lived experience. And I think that's really fascinating to keep bumping into, to always be having to do more or do something other than what you're actually doing in the moment. Eric, does that strike any chords with you?
Yeah, I've always, sometimes I get stuck on semantics, but I've always been like, is imposter syndrome any really, we just make stuff up? It's, to me, I'm like, it's just fear of failure. Like, I'm afraid that if I try something and it doesn't succeed, then I look stupid. And because most of the people, it's like, I mean, I know I can help couples. I know I have track record speaking, but every time you put me on a stage, there's a little bit of fear that I don't get it right, and people think I'm an idiot, and so it's not like I'm an imposter. I could see the imposter syndrome if it's like year one of me doing a new skill and somehow I get on Tony Robbins' stage. I'd be
Oh,
like,
right,
okay,
right.
maybe I don't belong here. But when you've been doing something for a while, to me, I'm like, I think it's just fear of failure. I'm afraid that I'm gonna try this, it's not gonna go well, and I'm gonna look stupid, and I got to answer to people. And so for me, it just comes back to we don't like failure. And then you look around, and all the success stories you see are the blow it up ones, not the I
Ah,
don't care who it is, he's like, oh, the overnight sensation, who you talk to them and they like, I've been at this for 22 years,
Right.
that's just, about me now kind of thing. And so I think even in relationships, like I could tell you stories from 15 years ago where I'm meeting some dude for breakfast because, he cheated on his wife and his wife called my wife and my wife told me I need to call him and go meet with him. And I'm like, I don't want to meet with this dude. What am I going to say? But I step into it anyway. I can tell you stories of showing up at my friend's house at 11:30 at night and dragging him into the garage because he's acting a fool and we need to talk about his marriage kind of thing. So I've been doing that forever. So whenever this begins to grow or look whatever it looks like, I've been doing this for decades. Just nobody knew. Nobody knew I was in Steve's garage at 11:30 p.m. on a Thursday.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, in case you didn't know, Eric actually also started the company Apple. His name is Steve Wozniak. This Eric is just a stage name.
Yeah,
In the garage.
that's true.
He's been in Steve's garage for a long time.
It was a good little experiment, but had to move on to
Yeah,
bigger
you
and
make
better
your
things.
first couple billion, and it's like,
Yeah,
what
so
now?
What are you gonna do?
What
yeah,
now?
yeah.
What are
Still
you
more
gonna do?
challenges
Sit around and
left.
spend my money or go help couples? Come
Right,
on.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and that's why you got to start these 501c3. So complete sarcasm for those of you at
Oh,
home.
and by the way, you brought up 501c3. That's is that nonprofit status?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks
yeah.
for pointing that out.
Yeah.
So Eric, okay, so we're talking here about relationships, and Ryder and I have all the answers. We know the right way, but please do help
That's why I'm
enlighten
here.
our listeners. Yeah, yeah. Please tell us about our relationship, Ryder.
Oh, no, no, no. Oh boy.
Tell me about your feelings. No. So when we talk about relationships, Eric, I mean with altered marriage, I imagine like you're out there, you're teaching people, hey, here are some key things that you need to know. Maybe here are a couple of the things that are like the best things for you to focus on, or something for you to start working on. What do you guys stand for? I guess. What do you recommend?
Yeah, we stand for absolutely nothing.
I
That way
like
we
it.
don't have to ever take a stand.
I like it.
Yeah,
Hey,
that
why
way-
face
and
that
you
fear
can
of failure
fall
if you
for
don't have
anything.
to,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Stand for nothing, fall for anything.
everything.
I like
Right.
it. Fall for
I'll-
everything. There you go.
I'll never fail because I'm never trying to do anything. This is
Amen.
fantastic. I feel good about myself. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing with relationships is everybody's different, right? And so I think there's general principles that work for all relationships, and then I think every relationship's unique. I know stuff some couples do that if you told another couple to do it, it's never going to work for them.
Right.
And but I think if I had to say, what for me, there's kind of three pillars I think that help us succeed and thrive in marriage. I would say intentionality, I would say community, and personal responsibility. To me, are three things I always want to talk about with couples. And we can dig into those as little or as much as you want to. So intentionality, we just got to be intentional. I think the misnomer we walk away from dating with is good relationships are built on good chemistry. We just get each other, and we just, because when you're dating, everything just kind of organically happens, right? You love each other and you date and you have fun together and you're affectionate and you have sex, and you don't really think about it, and then you get married and have kids and jobs, and everything gets in the way. And so I think intentionality is key to maintaining that. I think community, you said it before, I think an isolated couple's in trouble, because you're sitting in a house with your spouse, and they're not acting right for whatever reason. They're not willing to listen or allow you to influence them. What do? If you have no community, nothing. If you have community, my wife's got a handful of guys that if I ever go sideways. So for me, the community is security for your relationship, right? If I ever decide to go sideways, my wife's got 5 guys she can call in a heartbeat, and when they call me, I'm about to be held accountable. And that, I think that's safety for me and for her in the marriage. Not just she's counting on me to always choose right, But if I choose wrong, there's some guys I've allowed in my life that can come in and kind of correct me. So, and then personal responsibility. I don't have a good percentage, but more and more I see marriages not succeeding because of individual issues more than relational issues. If you have not healed some of the areas in your life and they're now affecting your relationship, I think, that has a big impact. So that's kind of the overview of those three ideas.
Yeah, no, I love that a lot. And, especially that last point right there, where you talked about individual issues versus issues between the couple. Because, we're three men who live in Texas. I think we have plenty of men who we've come around in our lives who are stubborn enough or have enough of that male ego and things like that help them forget that, hey, maybe you're a part of the problem and maybe you need to look inwards. And I calling out the guys from Texas, but I'm really, it's everyone, right? People, whether you're a woman, a man, or whatever you are, it doesn't matter what's going on. Sometimes you need to look in the mirror.
Yeah, I heard a little quote the other day by kind of a spiritual guru who was saying something along the lines that, and this is around in a circle around this, but he basically said that to be alone is the only time you can actually be with the authentic you. And we're always trying to be individuals and looking for kind of sovereign individuality. But one of the problems with that is that if you can't be alone, you can't find the authentic you. And so there's this kind of idea to kind of get caught up in jumping into relationships or other things to save yourself from yourself.
Right.
And so I can kind of see how difficult that would be, right? If you're actually trying to save yourself by being in a relationship, but you're still bringing all your baggage because you haven't just been alone with yourself or figured out your own nonsense, well, then you're just going to amplify any of those problems once you get into a long-term relationship.
Yeah, and one thing that immediately popped to mind as you're saying that is, and I'm sure you've heard of this many times too, Eric, where people will do something like, "Oh, our relationship's not great, so let's have a kid. Maybe that'll fix things."
Oh, wait, 2 kids.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and I laugh, but I don't I don't want to make fun of the people who have said that, because it's again, like, people are afraid and they've got this fear and their fear of this relationship failing, and they're like, well, I don't know what to do, so they do something like that, right? So I want to make sure we don't laugh at that, but it's more like, hey, there are other ways to deal with that.
Well, and that'll help in the short term too. I mean, right? If my relationship sucks and now I got a baby to focus on, I'm not as concerned that my spouse isn't doing what I need them to do, right? So it does feel like a short term fix. But yeah, Ryder, I think you need both of what you said. Time alone, which is self reflection and growing yourself. But we also don't know a lot of our issues until we get in a relationship, right? I was the most patient guy in the world when I lived by myself.
Amen to that.
On a desert island, we're all amazing.
Yeah. I never had any anger issues till I got stuck in a relationship I couldn't get out of, kind of thing. So I think it's the combination of those things. You need other people around you to expose some of your stuff. That's why I think before people get married, if you've never had a roommate, I'm like, even if you don't like people, get a roommate.
Yeah.
That'll give you an idea of what it feels like to get pissed when someone eats your leftovers or leaves dishes in the sink, just all the small stuff. Because otherwise you go from autonomy and peace and quiet and solitude every time you're at home to something where, dang, every time I walk in the house, she's still here. This is like, God, I can't get away. So
yeah, I know that feeling. We've had Danielle on a few times, but she's just keeps coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you. Goodness.
No, it is funny though how at times you come home and you're so happy that they're there for you, and then the next day you come home and you're like, oh, why are they still here? Like I find that those little, we were talking about context earlier and how it can shift so quickly. Like how one day this is an amazing thing, and the next day it's this like horrible thing, this little stumbling block that's in your way.
And it sucks because, like, in the case for a lot of people, you're like, I really love this person, I really care about this person, but maybe you're like, I just don't want to hear their sound of their voice right now. And then on top of that, you think that, you say that, and then you feel horrible for thinking that and saying that.
Yeah. How do you, Eric, does this happen a lot too? Is right. Like if you do actually, like there is this idea of being honest with the other person and giving voice to things so you don't build up resentment. But then you say these things and you're like, well, I'm an awful person. And then you feel guilty for being so awful. Like these little cycles.
Sure. And then they remind you, like, you 2 weeks later at dinner, you're like, well, it must be tough to have to sit here and listen to my voice again, huh? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's
But
something.
again, I think that goes back to this personal responsibility and being content and healed as I mean, we all got wounds from our childhood, from past relationships, I think, but trying to be as healed and whole as you can is helpful, because otherwise for instance, that yeah, we need to be honest and truthful. I mean, we don't, obviously there's rude, right? If your spouse asks how it looks, you don't need to tell them fat every time, right? If they're overweight, tell them it looks great, right? But I think there's a perfect example. You take somebody who has some rejection issues from whatever childhood, growing up, performance based home. They were never enough. They got a 95. Dad said, "Why didn't you get 100? You went 3 for 4 at baseball, and you should have went for 4 for 4." And you know, or they've been rejected in past relationships. Now they step into a relationship. Or you take somebody that came from a healthy situation where you can do anything, we believe the best, you're awesome. Those two people are going to receive what you just said to them in completely different ways. You say
Mhm.
the exact same thing to the two different people. The healthy person might go, that kind of stings, but I get it. You need some space, and sometimes we need some independence. The rejection person, they're done.
Sorry.
I mean, they're through the
Oh, give
roof.
us
I
just a
can't
One sec.
believe
second.
One
you
sec.
rejected
Sorry.
me.
Of course this happened. Not bad. Eric, can you say something for us?
Hey, how
All
you
right.
doing?
Yeah, you give
Oh,
him the space.
sorry.
Continue. Sorry about that.
Yeah, the rejection person, you say the same thing, and they feel like the relationship's over. I can't believe you would say that about me, and that's so hurtful. And so that's where personal responsibility is huge. I need to get as healthy and whole as I can, so I'm not reacting to everything in the relationship. And I think that's one mistake I see a lot of couples making. They don't know their own or each other's kind of areas of woundedness, and so they get in relationships with somebody that doesn't help heal it, but instead exasperates it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and are there, I mean, do you recommend sort of some sort of steps to work through this so that people can I mean, my first thought is that yeah, it would definitely help if we could talk about these things. Do you recommend sort of like third-party therapy for this? Like what are the kind of steps to make sure that people are finding these sensitive areas and realizing, what is bothering or exasperating their partner?
Yeah, I think I mean, definitely if you're married and you got issues, go see a counselor. I think premarital counseling is huge for couples, seriously dating, thinking about marriage. And so I do that with couples. I'll do a 6 week package, and I think just forcing them to talk about some of that stuff. Hey, let's talk about, some past relationships and identify some stuff, just so you're aware of, because that's part of getting married, right? You're signing up to be a part of your spouse's healing process in whatever areas they may struggle. And so you marry somebody who has been cheated on in every relationship they've been in. You don't get, if you decide to marry them, you probably got to be sensitive in that area. You probably got to over communicate. You probably got to be, if you tend to be extroverted and flirtatious, you probably got to dial that back a little bit, knowing, don't just go, well, that's not my issue, I've never done it to you, they did it to you, don't put that on me. Like, well, okay, there's some truth to that, but there's also some truth to, I knew who you were and I decided to marry you. So let me do everything I can to make you feel safe, secure, and confident, right? I'm not going to have big periods of the day for 7 hours when you can't find me. That
Right.
may trigger you a little bit, right? I'm going to communicate with you a little better than that. So
Yeah, I've
yeah, I think therapy, or some people who are self-driven may be able to read books and develop some self-awareness through books and work on stuff, but generally having somebody talk you through that and help point that out is helpful.
Yeah, so real quick, I mean, there's really is no excuse for therapy that let me rephrase. The thing therapy allows you to do is you have a non-biased third party look at your situation. You can complain to them all you want. You can tell them all the things you want. They're not going to throw things in your face. They're not going to, say all of the things that you're doing wrong. They're going to work with you to help you find out the things that need working on. And some of that will be with you. Some of that may be with the other person. But the thing about therapy is it's that non-biased third party. And oh, by the way, they're an expert. There's someone like Eric who's been doing this for a long time. They've taken training to understand these things. They recognize, hey, when A happens, B typically can kind of help transition that and fix. They're able to see, hey, you're a different person who needs a different type of advice than this type of person who needs a different type of advice. And so there's really no replacing, no Google, no book, no podcast, no friend, which is really important. I feel like a very big thing that a lot of people do is they use their friends and their family as a therapist. And it's just like, yes, it's very important to have community. It's very important to bounce things off of each other
Sure.
and talk about that type of stuff. But there's no substitute for talking with an expert about it.
Yeah, well, this is all kind of new to me to start talking to third parties about it. But yeah, I have seen in the past where trying to use your family to discuss, like, I'm angry about X, Y, and Z in my relationship. Well, then your family starts getting this negative view of your spouse. And then when they show up to the house and they're a little off putting, like, oh man, like, did I just create this? I just made this, what, was a temporary bad situation for me into like a permanent, into a more long-term situation. And then I have to start doing the therapizing thing with my own family, right? Well, no, I said that back then, but this was, and it comes back into this more and more communication. And I've bumped into that before, but I think previously I didn't know where else to turn.
Right.
So yeah, it is kind of fascinating that now you can find professionals out there. That was the other thing I was really liking that you mentioned, Eric. That some people, if you come from like a performance household, then you're always going to take the pain onto yourself. You're going to be an absorber of any kind of guilt or shame or anything else. And there's other people who deflect. Nothing will penetrate that sort of shield that they have in front of themselves. And having a good therapist in front of you can actually sort of pinpoint these things and say, well, have you thought of it this way? Have you thought of it that way? And they might have the perfect wording combination to sort of like a ninjutsu master, and just one
Right.
finger, they just bam.
Well, and another
they
thing
get ya.
too is that even if somebody else has been telling you this all your life, whether it's a friend, a family, or maybe your spouse or someone in a relationship or one of your close buddies, there's a difference when somebody who's a third party hears the entire situation and then they say it and it's like, well, maybe you just needed to hear it from somebody else. Or and when you're telling it to the therapist, guess what? You get to tell your side of the story. And so if you tell your side of the story and then they still tell you the same thing those other people are telling you, then you have something internally to be like, okay, like maybe I need to like really consider that kind of thing. But I really like this idea of personal responsibility, Eric, because I think that's probably one of the things that people forget the most, especially in America. I think it's one of our cultural biases is since we are so individualistic, we are so much about me, me, me. It's easy to look at it and be like, oh, that person cut me off in the road. It's like, well, no, you were driving recklessly and were actually coming, but that was on you. But you don't see that because of your caveman brain. And so I really like this idea of individual responsibility. And actually, it was just earlier this week, I had one of my friends send me a YouTube TED Talk by Jocko Willink. He's the post Navy SEAL.
guy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's called Extreme Ownership. And he said it was extremely powerful for him to help him realize, like, hey, like at the end of the day, I'm going to own this thing. And he, of course, tells a story about, some SEAL mission or something and about whose problem is it and whose issue is it. And it's all about extreme ownership. So I really like that pillar a lot. But one of the things that I want to talk about here, because, we could talk about so much, we could talk about for hours. But one of the things I want to talk with you about, Eric, today is you coming into a relationship, whether or not you're married or not, and let's talk about me and Ryder here. We're a lovely couple, right? And I'm like, Ryder, I really like you, but there are a couple things that I want you to change, over the course of this relationship. And I actually just, when their first meeting, I already have a list of things like this long, right? And I'm like, could you be younger? Could you have a cooler mustache? Yeah.
No.
But then as we're going on and we're living our relationship a little more, some things maybe morph, some things maybe change, but there's still more things that I want you to change. So how do you decide, like, hey, what's a healthy amount to ask somebody to change? And how can you do it in a way where, Ryder feels safe and heard and understood and actually willing to make some kind of change instead of, I feel like the trap that's really easy to fall into a lot of times is, I come home, I'm frustrated. I see all of these things like, well, I told you to do that, and why didn't you do it this way? And oh, that, and that's how my analytical mind goes. And then Danielle, my wife, is like, well, I didn't mean to do those things, and I was trying to do better. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, don't get married.
Yeah, right. You heard it here first. Thank you very much. Don't get married.
I love Eric just comes into
No,
the
I mean,
zinger.
Right?
yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're getting married already with a desire and hope and expectation that they're going to change it, like, I'll marry you, but I really need these four things to change. What if they don't? Because again, you'll never be in control of another person, period, which is why marriage is so frustrating.
Say that one more time.
You will never be in control of another person.
I feel like that's one of the hardest lessons to learn. And it's so
Yeah.
easy to say, but to really internalize that and take it in is very hard. And that's something I've struggled with myself.
Yeah, I mean, so marriage, we all know marriage requires adjustments, right? It does require change, right? I can't just be like, well, this is what I am. And my wife's like, well, it'd be nice if you would talk a little softer to me. Well, this is just the way I talk, so figure it out. That's not going to work long term. So we do need to make adjustments, right? Our spouses are different than us. You've heard, the five love languages or emotional needs, or there's all these books on how we all give and receive love differently, right? So that's part of learning your spouse and understanding, hey, they feel cared for when I touch them, give them gifts, do something nice for them, spend quality time, pump them up. You know what? It's good to know the things you do that make your spouse feel good, and you have to adjust, right? Because it's like, that may not matter to me, but you like that, so I need to adjust. But I think when you go in with like, I can be married to you if these three things change, to me is kind of a setup for failure. It's just like what you said before, going back to personal responsibility. Like, well, if we just have kids, I'll feel better. So some people get married because this person fills something that's missing in them, right? But that's dangerous, because then the whatever reason we get married for, if that ceases to exist, we'll want to get out of the marriage, right? If I married you for financial stability and you lose your job, now I don't want to be married to you. If I'm married to you because you made me feel good about myself, you quote loved me, and we're in a season where we're fighting and you're not loving me, now I want to be out of the marriage, right? So I I think we do influence each other. I think we do need to ask for things and make adjustments. But I think when you go in with a mentality of, I'm gonna marry you, but these three things got to change, or we're just probably not gonna make it. Because like you said, Reed, they're gonna find five more things. So if you go in with three, I guarantee you don't know everything. And we change, who I am at 47 is not who I was at 22. I'm different.
Mhm.
And so there's a whole new set of issues with me. There's a lot less give a crap in my life at 47 than there was at 22. The older you get, the less you care about stuff. So I'm different. So the answer is yes, we need to adjust and we do need to change for one another. But if your expectation is they've got to change these things in order to be me to be with you, I think that's a setup for failure.
Yeah, and I just want to point out one thing. I mean, a lot of your language is talking about as if this is before getting married or before starting that serious relationship. But, that also happens a lot of times when people are in this relationship for a while and they start to question and they're like, hey, like, okay, I'm tired of you putting your freaking shoes in the middle of the living room, or you come home dirty, smelling like a rat. Like it would be nice
This
if you
guy
shower
Yeah.
before, like, you come and sit next to me on the couch, or get all of that grease and brake cleaner that you wash your hands with, and all that kind of stuff on the couch or in the bed.
Yeah, though, and those are some of that also seems to come back to like communication and shared living space, and some of that's being respectful to your partner. And then there's other times when that can go overboard, where they're just henpecking you about things that are not actually important or vital anymore. And it seems like there can be a role that people take on. And my role is every time you come into the door to criticize you for something, or you can be the one that's criticizing. And so I think that that's something else that gets kind of established sometimes in relationships is you're going to play a certain role to set up a certain dynamic. And maybe you're getting something out of it, maybe you're not, maybe you don't even know anymore. So that there seems like there needs to also sort of be like check-ins or something where you have a time period where you can actually voice some of these things. I'm throwing that out. I'm
Yeah.
making it up right now, so
No.
maybe that's a bad idea.
And
That's a
before,
that's a great makeup idea. That goes back to one of the pillars I said, which was intentionality, right? I think a lot of the things that happen naturally early on in dating and marriage, later on in marriage, don't happen. And so part of it is being intentional. I think being intentional with your time and conversations solves a lot of stuff. So what you're talking about is more difficult conversations, right? Where I'm trying to express to you stuff that is either hurtful or frustrating or so we got two options. Either be intentional about when we have. So I actually suggest that a lot of couples have a weekly staff meeting. Once a week, sit down. And this is a time for some of those business conversations, whether it's talking about the budget, if we're trying to get our finances right, whether it's talking about logistics with the kids. But I think that's a time to do just what you said, give feedback. Hey, we talked about these areas of our relationship. You've been frustrated. I'm leaving my shoes in the middle of the living room all the time. How'd I do this week? And you can give real time feedback. So you think about when's a difficult conversation going to go better? 7:30 on Sunday evening at our weekly staff meeting when we both know that's why we're there, or Tuesday night when I'm sitting on the couch watching my favorite show and my wife walks by, plops down and starts laying into me about what I don't do right.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
I'm
really
probably
glad
going to
you.
respond a little better to staff meeting than I am on a Tuesday night when I just got ambushed, right? Kind of thing. So there's merit to what you're saying, which is have a regular time of evaluation and feedback and kind of make that regular. Obviously, how we deliver it and all that kind of stuff matters, right? Don't do it when you're tired or hungry and watch your tone and all these things. But to have a specific time to do it, I mean, you're already increased your percentage of success, tenfold just by setting a time up for it. So yes, your on the fly made up idea is phenomenal.
Yeah, no, good job. Well
Well,
done.
thank
Give
you,
everyone
thank you.
yourself one of these.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Pat, pat.
hold on. Let me use one of these sound effects. Oh, give him some
Oh
applause.
yeah, all right. Yeah.
Oh well, I'm really glad you brought that up because one of the phrases that came to my head was check yourself at the door, right? Because I think it's really easy to come into the house or restaurant or wherever you are meeting your date or significant other or married or your spouse, and bring whatever mood you have. Oh, I'm stressed out from work. I just got through traffic. This guy was a jerk to me. All these types of things, and you bring all of that energy and all of that baggage with you into the situation, and then yeah, maybe the first thing you do is point out. Oh, and you walk in the door and you open the door and you start to see all of the clutter. You see the undone projects that people have started and not finished. Why do they always start projects and never finish them? And
Just
you see
finish something.
right, and it's like you see all of this stuff and it triggers you so much. And the first thing that you're naturally going to want to do with that caveman brain is one, either internalize it and let that black ball kind of build inside, or two, you're going to take it out on the other person.
Yeah, yeah, those are little fascinating things that kind of get stuck in is checking yourself at the door and when I used to commute and I had this really long commute, I had like a 45-minute to hour long commute each way. And so during that time I'd put in something like I don't know Wayne Dyer or something and you would listen to something to like change your frame of mind and get you into a different headspace and that really helped coming home. Now my commute is about 3 seconds when I go from the shop into the house. And so, I have been trying to do things like that are little things and I don't think of them as relationship things as much, but just like self stuff is to just sometimes go for a walk around the block before coming into the house. Part of it's just to take in nature, but it also does kind of a fantastic thing of giving you like a transition space and a transition time. And if you don't have those in your life, they're really fantastic. There are times in your life where you don't get that. I mean, there's a lot of people, if you've got 3 kids and you're running errands all the time and trying to get them to soccer practice and this, that, and the other, this is not going to be easy for you to find.
I'm curious, in that walk, are you listening to anything? Are you
Unplugged. Yeah.
and what do you think about that? Because I feel like, myself and many others default to, oh, let me put in some music, let me put in a podcast, let me put in an audiobook. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're intentional about not putting something in. Why do you do that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm always consuming all the time. I feel like I'm always bombarded and there's a magical moment around 12 to 15 minutes in when your brain finally kicks in and starts paying real attention to nature. All the little voices in your head start going kind of silent. Maybe they wear themselves out. If you're aware of them, if you've been doing something like meditation or whatever, then you can see those voices show up. But there is something magical for me anyway at about the 12 to 15-minute mark where my brain finally calms down, and then I actually get to be present in the moment. And then I'm like, oh, well, this is wonderful. The world is great. Everything is fantastic. And when you come home with that mindset, yeah, I think everything's got to be better. Like whatever rolls at you at that point, you're okay with it. Like you can roll, you have some balance, you have your footing.
Yeah, sorry, I fell asleep with Ryder's meditative, soft,
I
soothing
like it.
nature talk.
I like it. It's very soothing.
That's the
Yeah.
that's the morning show.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think it's great though. I mean, it's you're taking that intentionality, you're recognizing that it's something you need to do, and that personal responsibility. And also, I really like how you're basically you're barking up his tree here. It's like I recognize I need to make sure I'm coming into this in the right way before we can have the healthy relationship.
Yeah, and you know yourself, right? I mean, different people are different. Some people need time and space to recharge. Other people love recharging around others, and so part of that, at the end of the day, marriage is a process of finding the rhythm that works for you and your spouse, and everybody's different, right? And so we all have gaps in our relationship where our conflict takes place, whether it's personalities or perspectives on stuff, and so trying to do our best to close those gaps is what minimizes conflict for us, right? We're not part of the problem we have in marriage, I think, is we bought into this myth that we can resolve every issue we have. And there are just some unresolvable issues in marriage, depending on who you marry. And trying to completely resolve those is wasted energy, right? You're not going to change your spouse's personality. If you're an extrovert and they're an introvert, you're never going to meet right in the middle. You're just not. So how do you manage that? How do you move a little bit towards each other and allow space in that gap to, allow the extrovert to go out and hang out with friends and fill that need and not require you to go with them every time, but go with them sometimes, and allow the introvert to have more space. You're just never going to meet in the middle and go, oh, we figured it out perfectly. If we go out 1.73 times per week, we're both happy, and it just doesn't work.
I mean, and you jest with that number thing, but I've had somebody ask me before, is like, hey, what is a normal amount of times for us to talk or for us to hang out? And some of that comes from, wondering, like, is there some magical number? Yes, but some of it's also like, maybe I haven't seen in my life a healthy relationship that I can use to judge that off of. And also, to recognize that every relationship's different, every person's different, and that may vary a lot, but it makes it hard as someone who's trying to figure it out and like trying to know what to expect, right? I mean, expectations, I feel like, are a huge thing. We had a whole, I don't know if it's a whole episode, but a good chunk of episode where we talked about expectations, and that can apply to all sorts of things, but especially apply to relationships. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I like that you're bringing up one of his pillars of community here, right? That if you're around other people with other relationships, then you can actually moderate some of those expectations. The idea that your partner has to be the end all be all for you at all points in time, that might be unrealistic, but it seems like we're increasingly pushed into thinking that way about things. And without a community around, then yeah, that person does have to be everything for you. And that's got to be tough.
Right. And having that community, by the way, I mean, we've mentioned it can't be a complete replacement for therapy, but it is a good first step to have those people to help you be accountable, help you take that personal responsibility, and help recognize, when Steve needs to be taken out of the garage and shaken a little bit, right? And Steve needs to be receptive to that, and he knows, like, hey, these guys, and this is a very big thing, both in relationships with friends, family, and also significant others. It's me and you versus the problems of our relationship, and not me versus you. And that's a very subtle thing, but it's a very important shift, because when the person feels attacked, it's, again, caveman brain. They're going to have the chemicals released that get them on the defensive, and they're not really going to hear you. They're not going to really take that in. So, I know there's so much we could go into here, because this has been great, Eric. But one thing I wanted to point out was our challenge. So we do a challenge every show, and before I say what the challenge is, I wanted to point out this weekly meeting thing. So I actually heard something similar by Mila Kunis, the famous actress. She was on Dax Shepard's podcast, which is called Armchair Expert, a while back, and I heard that episode, and she talked about how she's married to Ashton Kutcher, fun fact, who played Steve Jobs. So here we are, full circle.
Man, look at this.
Look at that. But
Perfect.
yeah, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. But anyways, she was talking about how they practice a little bit modified version of Shabbat, which is a Jewish tradition where I believe on Friday nights, I may be messing this up, they have essentially this family meeting that you're talking about. And she was talking about how important it is to them, and that gives them the space every week to talk about those things. And also, just that frequency, I would say once a week is a good number, because if you're doing it every single day, it can get kind of grinding. Like, okay,
Yeah,
I don't need to know how to improve every day. Like, stop. That's part of the problem in some relationships.
Yeah.
I know for me and my wife, that's one of the things we struggle with. But having that scheduled time, it helps give that steam can boil off before it gets too much pressure. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that idea. And so that's what my challenge for you guys today is, pick a relationship. And, if you don't have a significant other, that's perfectly fine. Maybe you have a really close friend or family member, or maybe your parents, whoever it may be. Maybe you need to have some regular time where you're talking with them and like, hey, I'd like for us to just chat and have this time to release tension and have a safe space to tell people about what's bothering us, and, maybe some of the things that you're doing that are grinding my gears, and you can tell me some of the things that they're doing that are grinding my gears. But it's really important to come from a place of understanding, and don't come with like, I'm going to get him on this, and I'm going to get him on that, and I'm going to get him on this. Like, take a step back, and maybe if you're the one who typically like has that kind of criticality, let the other people talk first. You have any other tips to how they can make this weekly meeting go well?
Yeah, I think asking questions, right? So feedback always feels better when you ask for it than when you're given. So I think, in the context of marriage, that's where, let's say, for instance, my wife and I have identified, she struggles with my tone and I come across as condescending or something, and I want her to be more affectionate. Let's say that's our areas we've identified. So at that weekly staff meeting, part of what we do is I say, hey, how did I do this week with my tone? I've been trying to work on it, and she can give me real-time feedback. Hey, Tuesday at this moment, it felt like this. I thought Thursday was a lot better, and vice versa. So I think asking for feedback is a great starter than just having it given. You're
And
just more
how
receptive
good
to
does it
it.
feel, for your wife when you come to her and you say, "Hey, I know this is something that I struggle with. I know this is something that we've talked about before, and this is something I'm trying to be intentional about. I'm trying to take that personal responsibility and make that change. Will you tell me when I have done well at that and when I have failed at that?" And then she's like, "Well, this is great. I can imagine. I mean, but is that you tell me?"
Yeah, no, absolutely. It speaks high value to somebody else that you care enough to know how you're. I mean, I think that's an aspect of a healthy person, that you actually care about how your behavior impacts the other person you're in relationship with. A lot of people don't. It's like, yeah, well, that's your issue. That's a whole nother route we don't need to run today, when you start talking about gaslighting and narcissism and people that convince you that you feeling bad because they did something to you is your issue, not theirs, because they didn't intend to. And it's like, you don't get to have your own experience in relationship, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it does a couple things. One, it speaks value to the other person, that I care enough to ask how I'm impacting you. And two, for, in a lot of relationships, you may have somebody who's non-confrontational, and a non-confrontational person is not going to start a quote confrontational conversation on a Tuesday night randomly, because they don't want to ruin the whole night. And so a staff meeting gives them more of a voice, because they know this is an okay place to do it. And so, it's another way to bridge that gap when you have one person that doesn't mind stepping in a confrontation, the other person who hates it. If you have a specific time where this is where we do it, the non-confrontational person, is going to feel a lot more empowered and safe to step into those conversations too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, there's just so much we could go into here, and we've really enjoyed having you on, Eric. And for those of you at home, this was Eric's audition. So you guys let us know, if you ever want him to have us back on again, or you think he should never come. We'll see. If we get to 1 million likes, we'll maybe consider having Eric back on. Yeah. No, I think
if you only have 10 likes, then somebody will shoot me in my sleep, please.
Yeah, there you go. There's your 2 options. Perfect.
Wow. You better start calling your friends and having them like the show.
Please call. Oh man, so Eric, we've enjoyed having you on so much more, and we would love to have you back in the future. There's so many things that we talked about. I think this was a great just dipping our toe in the water, but there's so much out there that we could talk about. So I'm really looking forward to having you back on. But before I do that, I want to make sure to let people know where you come from. And so one of the best areas, I'll speak for you, for people engage with altered marriage is with your YouTube channel, Relation Shots. And I just shared a link in the chat right now to one of the ones that I really liked, which was boundaries in relationship, how to tell if you have boundary issues and what to do about it. And I also, again, this is one I really will stress. It doesn't matter if you have a significant other or not, or you're looking through this a relationship lens, like a romantic relationship. This is good for regardless of if it's romantic or not, because boundaries are something I personally think that a lot of people struggle with, and they don't realize that they struggle with it. And it's like, hey, this is a line for me, and I'm defining that line for you. And here are the consequences and holding people to that. So that was one of my favorite videos that you had that I've seen so far. So we put that in the chat for people to check it out. And then also you have a website, right? Eric, what's your website?
Yeah. It's just alteredmarriage.com. Just make sure altered spelled ALTARED, like an wedding altar. Play on words. Great. So just so they make sure they get that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is great. So
I don't think the other one takes you anywhere, but it's always one of those things. You feel like porn sites somehow sneak up and do the ERED, and then you're sending people who knows where. So just be careful. I do not claim responsibility if you end up somewhere goofy by misspelling.
Yeah,
so.
If you're bad at Google, it's on you.
And if you end up watching too much porn, then you can check out his YouTube video that talks about porn in relationships.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, so he's got a video for that as well.
Segue there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Eric. You have a great rest of your day, and sorry we ran a little late thanks to our technical issues. But
no problem. Good hanging out with you guys. We'll do it again soon.
All right,
okay,
see you.
Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Wow.
It's great.
What do you think?
Yeah, he was great. He was so nice. He was sitting there listening to you and I just ramble, and then we'd ask him something, and he'd just throw out this like gem. It was really fantastic.
I mean, I feel like our relationship's gotten better already.
Dude, do you want to move over here onto the couch with me?
Oh, sweetie.
A little more affectionate.
Oh, schnookums. You want me to scoot over there?
Okay, I have problems with the baby talk.
That's a boundary.
Set some boundaries.
Okay, good,
yeah,
good.
Yeah,
What's the punishment? Wait, that's not what that was meant to be?
You don't get to give me those eyes when you say that word.
Oh gosh. Oh,
this
man.
is so complicated.
Oh, man. Well, hopefully this has been interesting for you guys out there. Please let us know. Guess what? You have a problem with your relationship. You want to know the answers. Read, some of this stuff resonated with me. I heard something in there. I really want you to talk more about that. Well, guess what? You can tell us. You jump in the comments on any of the platforms that we're streaming on right now, which is YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. You can jump on any of those platforms, or you can go to our website, helpfulforlife.com, and hit the Contact Us button. Look, if you're listening to me right now, I am talking to you specifically. I'm saying this every episode, but yet we don't have a ton of people reaching out. So guess what? Tell us your problem. If you want to remain anonymous, just say you want to remain anonymous, and we will help you. And guess what? If you're having that problem, there are many other people who are having this problem, because guess what? Ryder has a lot of problems. So
I do.
Help him.
Yeah. We've got a list we're making, and it's a really long list. So if you could, chime in and nail one of my problems,
that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
we could then do an episode on it, and I don't have to feel so bad.
Oh man, so it has been a wonderful day so far. So why don't you guys go out there and keep it being more wonderful?
Yeah, Thirsty Thursday. Beverage of choice.
Yeah, drink
I'm
that
still
water.
On coffee, but yeah.
and then maybe transition into something else.
Yeah, something.
You never know, like milk
with tonic.
Yeah, milk with tonic.
So gross.
Well, that's it for us today. Y'all have a wonderful day.